Welcome back to Underground Graphics. Now today we have something special for you viewers. We have a 2024 Mustang in the house. Now we are going to be doing a stripe kit for it, and these stripe kits are cut to fit. But before I go too deep into that, I do want to pull you in here to the cleaning products and the prep. Now we, of course, as always, have our alcohol water mix and our soap and water mix. Now, if you are returned to the channel or for your first time here, I typically like to go over the vehicle, whether it's new like this or not, especially if it's still new. You might get contaminants that are on the body. So I like to go over the paint, surface, whatever that you're about to apply on with a alcohol water mix first. Wipe it down, make sure that any of the big contaminants are off of it, and then return over it with a soap and water mix and a clay bar, not just by itself with the soap, but using that soap to help you glide over that paint. Kind of helps you exfoliate the clear coat and anything that might be embedded in there. And even though embedded sounds like it's something serious, it usually just kind of gets stuck on there. So if you feel a little bit of grit on top of your paint, it's nothing to worry about. It is something that you can more than likely get out with that clay bar. Once you are done with that, you do want to wipe it up with a clean towel. Of course, you do want to have as many clean towels as you can get your hands on. If they fall on the floor or anything like that, do not use those. You will scratch your paint, and you might be able to compound it out, but just to make sure that you are safe, you do want to make sure that those towels stay off of the ground and in a clean space. Now, after you clean off that soap, I like to go back over it with the alcohol just to make sure that it doesn't have any more soap deposits on there and that the adhesive has a good surface to bond on. Along with clean towels, you do want to have clean hands and a clean work environment. Now, not just with that, you do want to have an enclosed environment and a good climate control. We are starting to creep up on the warmer temperatures again here in Texas. So we are keeping our shop at roughly about 72 degrees, which is perfect for the vinyl, being that we use a dry install. We don't do a wet install. It prevents the vinyl from, if it's too hot, from stretching, or if it's too cool, from breaking. If it is too cold, you might end up snapping that vinyl if you're trying to pull onto it. Of course, with this kit, you don't have to try and manipulate that material. It is something that, as mentioned before, is pre-cut and will lay down, so you won't have to try and force anything, but you don't want to run in any of those risks with having either too cold or too warm of a temperature. So about 65 degrees to roughly 75 degrees is that range that you want to be in. Along with enclosed area, you want to make sure that your floor is clean, since you will be working on the front lower portion and the rear lower portion of this vehicle. You don't want to pick up too much dirt and dust, and that is done by cleaning the surfaces around the area that you're going to be applying on the vehicle, and as well as either wetting the floor, or if you have a option to wipe the floors like it's epoxy like this one, you can wipe off the floor with ease. So now that we've gone over the cleaning, rest of the products that you will need to make sure that you are going to do a good install on your 24 Mustang. Tape, of course, it is very important. Helps you line up everything that you need to. Now, before you lay down any of the tape, you do want to try and find somewhat of a midpoint, and that is why we have here, and we are offering these on the website. Of course, yours won't look like mine. We do have our logo and label on it, but it is a seamstress or cloth tape for measuring. It helps a ton. You can go over the edges, the corners, and you don't have to worry about trying to kink an actual measuring tape, the metal ones that you typically see for construction and other types of activities. And you don't have to worry about it touching your paint or scratching your paint if it does touch your paint. So you do want to make sure that you have good corners to measure off of with this kit. So you want to go from either the corner of whatever the graphic is to a different corner of the vehicle, and I'll be sure to show you guys that so it is a little bit easier to understand than just me simply explaining it. Next up, we have the Underground Graphics squeegee. Now, that is another thing that we will have available on the website, as well as the cleaning products. You can purchase that from us, and it may even come with your kit, depending on what you do order from us. You may already have one if you're a return customer. And of course, with this type of kit, it is something that you would more than likely want to use that felt tip for, or called a monkey strip. It is also offered on our website as well. That does prevent you from scuffing your paint, and that is not a deep scuff of sorts, or I'd like to call it a bird feet scratch or bird foot scratch. And it is just a light surface scratch that's on the paint. It can be compounded out with a little bit of rubbing compound, but if you do want to avoid having to go back and treat that area, then I would highly suggest using that felt. Last, we'd have the pair of scissors. Now you can get any type of pair of scissors as long as it is sharp, because we will be using what I like to call, or what Greg likes to call, the hinge method, which is a lot easier to get the graphic down without having to manipulate anything or anything going out of place. So now we have all the cleaning products, environment, and of course clean hands. We can dive into this install. It'll be a fun one. So here we are at the front of the vehicle. Now I'm going to start on the lower portion of the bumper, work my way up and then to the back. Now before I jump into that, I do want to point notice at what I was talking about before with those measuring points. I like to go off of corners. Now the fun part about any type of vehicle is that even though it was made at a manufacturer, there are chances that the panels are just a little bit shifted from a different one. So I'm not going to go over all of the measurements on here, unfortunately, but I am going to show you guys how to get the measurements, so that way you do have the center line for your graphic stripes. Now, I typically like to go from an edge like this corner right here. Put 0 right there at that edge, and then find a good point that is consistent with the other side. I should hit about 11.5 inches, might be a little bit over, but that's what we have. We got 11.25 there. Move over to the side here, line up right where it said 11.25, and then we move over, and that's exactly where we hit on this side. So if you ever want to check your work or anything like that, or you're unsure whether or not it is centered, one, you can grab a second pair of eyes. They'll let you know, because sometimes when you stare at something for long enough, it looks like it's straight, but it's not. Or you can go off of a different line. You can use that corner one more time. You can go up to here on this portion of the bumper where it meets a little bit more of a sharp angle, and any other point that you might want to go from. That is totally up to you. But of course, you do want to try and keep them as simple and recognizable as possible, so that way if you need to go back and check your positioning, then you can without having to wonder where you let off from. So now that I've gone over that, we can start getting into this install. Now, as mentioned, these are cut to fit. So today for this install, I only have the scissors on me as far as blades. I don't have my knives on me. And so this is a type of hinge method that I'm going to use. I'm just going to leave this passenger side tape over here, and then just work my way over to the driver's side, line that up. And this is going to butt up against that black trim piece. If you'd like to try and get it underneath, you can. If there is a little bit of paint showing, then that is common with this kit. That is not a problem. I like to try and get it as close as I can. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. You don't want to push that squeegee right up against that plastic off the bat. You just kind of want to work it really close to that edge. And now once you have that just right up against it, you can work your way back down. I would say work from the middle out and from the highest point slowly down for this curve. And you don't want to try and just force it over that edge. because it can end up buckling. And with this kit, if the mask is cut very close the way this one is, it could be difficult to try and lift that back up. So, see if I can get this. Ironically, I may need to use my knife to try and get up some of these edges, but we'll see how far I can get with just my fingernails. And as usual, you do want to pull at that 180 degrees to prevent having anything lift up on you. If you try to pull from a 90, you pull straight up, you might end up throwing off the other side that is still down with that masking paper. And so now that we have that off, we can go back, slip our squeegee underneath that plastic trim piece, and just slowly work it over. If you see, I'm keeping that edge inside of that trim, and then just kind of what I like to call Pac-Manning that vinyl underneath that trim. And if you like, you can start from one end, as I'm going to do here, work in that vinyl, and then once you're about halfway, about right there, I still have this up, you can go to the other side, do the same thing. That way you're not having to risk dragging your squeegee between those tight spaces, because you could create a wrinkle right there. Now we'll move on to the middle portion of the bumper. Same type of hinge method. Now for this one, it might be a little bit difficult, so if you want, you can use the side of your squeegee. Since this is still hanging down, it's not adhered to the edge of the car, and then slowly pull it. There we go. And once you have that started, you can hold that adhesive side of the vinyl. Again, this is why you want to have clean hands. I am going to let this float so that way I can get it underneath that black trim. Same Pac-Man method here. And I will have to go back and actually trim that one because I didn't set this as low as I could have. But that's no problem. That'll be a quick trim. Then we're going to go back over that with the squeegee just real quick, make sure it's set down in there, just in case you hit the road and it's raining or something like that. Now, luckily with this being a dry install, you can hit the road after you've done everything and gone over it with the heat gun. But before that, we'll go into the bumper. Now, I do want to mention that on some of these pieces, even though, and this is what sets us apart from those other kits that you can get off of eBay, Etsy, Amazon, and what have you, that this stripe here, along with some of the other ones, the ones that curve over the edges, do have a little bit of a skew cut to them. Now, if you were to lay that onto a flat surface, you would be able to see it. Here, it's a little bit difficult to see, but if you come in close and I show you the edge of this squeegee right here, you can see a little bit of a triangle a little bit of that paper on the other side that's just peeking through. Now we do have a little bit of an angle right here, and that is so that when it curves over, then it does straighten out. Since this bumper has a little bit of a point to it, it's going to shift that vinyl, and it's going to give the illusion that the line is straight, even though originally it was cut a little bit off. So same thing here. I'm going to use that hinge method. I use a couple different pieces of tape on the other side just to make sure that this stays in place and doesn't wiggle about. Now that you have that down a bit, you can go over here, start to pull that mask up. Of course, pull up your tape. If you did use kind of a 3-tape hinge technique that I used here. Now it's going to work in that edge. All right, now that we have the nose taken care of, we can essentially zip through the hood. It is not flat, but it does have the pieces already cut to shape, so that way it will account for the shape of the hood. Again, if you were to order these off of a Etsy, eBay type of site, then the stripes are typically cut straight. Now, that might sound like that's exactly what you want. However, when you do lay those stripes on, since this hood does have a bend to it and a little bit of a bubble to it, and then those stripes will have the tendency to look fine at the top, since that is the most flat part of the hood, but then they will start to taper in, and it will look very odd, and it will be obvious that the kit was not meant specifically for that car. So let's jump into the hood, and I'll go over the roof with you guys. Now when it comes to these hood pieces, we are going to lift this hood back up and make sure that everything is tucked properly, but this just really drives home that cut to fit. Alright, now we'll jump into the larger portion of the hood. Might look intimidating, but it's just as easy as that front piece was. Now don't forget to come back up to the front, work that squeegee into that scoop. You can see it trying to fall in there. Now this is totally up to you to get somewhat of a tuck on this. If you prefer to have a little bit of paint showing, that is fine as well. Okay, so now we're up here onto the roof. Now I'm going to do the front portion of the roof, but I do want to point out that if you come over here, there is a very, very thin line that you can use to line up your stripe. Now there's a center line if this is the original glass for your 24 Mustang. Hopefully it still is. There is a little bit of a triangle right there that you can kind of cheat to get the center of the stripe on. And then for the rear, you have that antenna that will help you figure out if it is straight. However, with that antenna, we have had a few instances so far, both with this generation Mustang and the previous ones, and other vehicles, that antenna isn't exactly straight. So you might be able to somewhat shift it, but typically they have been for what we've had in here, except for one other one. But that is something to keep an eye on, so that way your stripe isn't trying to compensate for the positioning of that antenna. Now let's get into it. So before I lay the back half of this stripe, typically I've learned that I like to cut out a little bit of a triangle just so that the top half of that shark fin does drop through and this lines up easily. Now if you are keeping that little bit of material between there, it can be a little difficult trying to work this around that fin. So if you just cut a little triangle in there, it should drop right over. You don't have to worry about having to fight around it. There it goes. And before you go for that antenna, you want to close in the adhesive around it first. And that's going to stop you from shifting it out of place, because you will be working from the inside out, getting the rest of that air out. You might have a little bit of overhang touching that third brake light up here. You just want to break that free. And if you want, you can put masking tape on that brake light so it doesn't stick. But it's a small piece and it is fairly easy to work around. Now that we have the roof on, we can make our way onto the back. All right, so nothing too special back here on the trunk. Just our usual hinge method here. The nice thing about this trunk is you do have nice corners to measure from, and you are lining up this stripe to make sure that it is even. And then we'll do the back side here, free that up. And then of course just move your tape. So that way you have all that on top of there. I try to make a habit of moving my tape on top of the mask so that way I don't end up making additions to the graphic that aren't supposed to be there in the first place. Same thing here at the top. Make sure you have pretty good contact there just to get that mask started. Now my placement once again is going to more than likely force me to cut, but I will show you guys where that is once I lay down this spoiler. And I'm going to pull this part of the spoiler up in the air. I'm going to pinch this side because it's in the air just to make sure it has a surface to hold on to. And work our way back here to the front. Same type of Pac-Man. We're going to go back under that edge just to make sure. Now right here is the spot where I possibly went a little bit further than what I needed to. I can either trim that or I can try and get that edge to come up and free it so that way I can maybe tuck that down in there. I'm trying to use my knife as little as possible. Of course, if you do place yours a little bit higher, you won't have to worry about this area. You may have a little paint showing as well with this rear deck lid piece. It is kind of a separate piece from the spoiler, so it is possible that you will have some white showing between your spoiler and your trunk. There is enough of a gap that I don't have to use my knife on this, so I do like that. There we go. And we still have this hanging back here. I am going to just fold this down just a little bit just to give myself some room. You can take it off if you already have the tape there. You just make sure that you break it away from the tape so you have your tape as a lineup indicator. And then for these edges, whenever you are going over them, you do want to work slowly. Go for the side that has the least amount of tape. Now this is one of those pieces that has those weird edges to it that are skewed slightly, so you do want to have those laid down last, as well as you do have this camera here. Now we don't have the camera pre-cut, but when you line up everything, you are able to feel where that camera protrudes out from this deck lid. And you do want to just cut a hole out so that way it makes it a bit easier for you. Really, the camera being there does give a little bit of aid to getting this in the middle. But I am going to lift up this mid piece and split this right in the middle, because this camera does have a bigger protrusion at the bottom here. I want to work around that but not throw off the stripe. Of course, you don't have to worry about your cut being straight because you locked in the vinyl on both sides of that camera. Now I can work my way down. That camera's locked in on the sides. Now you can go up, but only to that line. Now that since we've split this bottom, I can use it to pull up this mask, make my life a little bit easier. Stop at that halfway point, same thing with this side, so that way that it can all come up evenly. Might need a heat gun for this part, but I'm going to see if I can get this to lay down evenly. I am going to skip the GT mid garnish just for a second, just so that way I can get this trunk open and lay down this bumper piece, only because I do not feel like taking off this bumper piece right now, so I'll just give it priority. Make sure you have your trunk wiped down properly right here. The static from the vinyl might cause loose dirt to get trapped underneath, so I'm just using kind of the felt to just push away anything that might be there. Of course, you can go over it with your hand just to make sure. If you are in doubt, then you can always get a alcohol water mix on a towel and just wipe that off really quickly. Go to my squeegee now. And no, I have not forgotten about the top piece of the trunk. But since I'm already here, I am going to put this one on. These will be pre-cut out for you. And as added bonus, it does help you to line up that back bumper. So it is a little bit of a cheat, but a good one in my book. Now this is a part of the car that when you're cleaning it off, you do want to clean up here as well where that trunk release button is, because dirt may fall down and it is very difficult to get out from underneath vinyl. And you do want to work around these circles first, that way you don't have to worry about them having any wrinkles or buckles while you're getting that stripe laid down. It's a little difficult to pull, but see, let's start from that high corner. Now we're going to get the other portion of that trunk on here. Actually, if you feel like, it might be a bit easier if you just kind of set it midway. Of course, when you do press down on it to squeegee the air out from underneath the vinyl, you do want to keep your hand bracing the trunk so it doesn't close on you while you are trying to get this laid down. And that GT badge is another great cheat spot. Of course, I still like to measure. You're going to work in those small bits first. So you get in the outer edges of those letters. Make sure those don't move around. I'll work it out. And even though that the middle of the G and the T are laid down, you still want to be careful that that doesn't pop back up. And that is your stripe kit for your 2024 Mustang. All right, now that we've completed the main stripe kit, we are going to add a little bit something extra to this Mustang. Now, since it has the black accents already on it, we decided to put a black pinstripe on the outside of this racing stripe. Now, this is just a 1/4-inch pinstripe that we have here available. This is something that if you want to do and order, you can order it from us. We have many different colors, so you're not only stuck with the black, you can get crazy with it. You can set the pinstripe outside, like a 1/4-inch spacing in between and showing some paint in between. Totally up to you. This is just what we think would look really, really sick on this Mustang. Now, I've already gone ahead and cut this piece down, and this is going to be for this side of the hood. I made it a little bit longer. That's just so I have a little bit more playroom. And this does have a protective cap on top of it. So if you either can put it on your squeegee, you can put it on the car and just relieve that. That is up to you. You can leave this on, or you can take it off beforehand of putting everything on. It is cut to the size of the stripe, so you don't have to worry about there being a weird, awkward gap in between there. But just so that you know, it does have this film on top of it to keep it protected from scratches while you're applying it. So that way you're not on accident going to leave it on top and it ends up having a haze over your pinstripe. So this is very simple to do. I'm going to leave that protective on there so that way you guys know that you can either do it with or without. If you do take it off, just be very gentle and work about 1 inch at a time while you're holding where you left off from, so that way it doesn't pull that pinstripe. So when you lay that on there, you want to, and this does have a little bit of slidability to it. You can tell that since I haven't pressed it down, and that since we're in a cool environment, that you are able to get a little bit of time with that adhesive. You just want to butt that up to the edge right there. And then as you're going, probably only give yourself about 2 or so inches to work with. And as you see here, I'm far away from it. And if you swing the vinyl in, then you'll run into the stripe where that edge is. And that's where you want to apply. Sounds like a lot, but of course I do this almost daily. So it seems simple. And really it is. You just have to be willing to be patient with it. And just get that side to meet with that gray. It's definitely easy if you start with a small piece and just work your way there. You don't want to pull tight on the stripe because you can cause it to stretch. Since it is a small piece, it is very easy to stretch. So take your time. And that is how you properly lay the pinstripe that butts up to the racing stripe.
Or the chain ring of the watch. Too young for the clubs then. So what you do? So I had to make hits for the block. Yeah. Without no paper. Now wait for my album to drop. Look. Next up. We heard you.
So that's going to conclude the 2024 Mustang install. Now we do have plenty more coming for these, but for this one, I think that those matte titanium stripes with the gloss black really accent the gloss black and the wheels especially, along with the new addition that we have added just off the top of our heads, the nostrils that we have here, or if you want to call it the snout. We don't quite have a name for it yet, but it will be going live. Now, on top of all this aggressive looks, as I said, we will have more coming to you guys. Please let us know if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. We are here Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., and we will be happy to answer your phone calls and emails. Thank you again.
Don't stop.